Cool. All right. Thank y'all for coming. I'm sure more people will be popping in, so I'll be like accepting questions and all that sort of stuff. Today's presentation is on the rise and fall and rise again of Disney. Disney's a company I'm very passionate about, and the products, of course, I'm very passionate about. So this was fun to go through, and I've kind of found, as I've been going through the history, that there's also like kind of an exploration of people that almost destroyed the company. Mainly people who worked for the company and then were like let go or not treated properly. So it's really interesting. So we start with 1966. Walt Disney has established the company along with Ub Iwerks, the Nine Old Men, and this core group of animators. He's made, everything. He's made Disney. Disneyland opened in 1959. And so Disneyland is open. He's got his plans done for Disney World. He's started planning out Epcot Center, which is very different from what it ended up being. And then Walt dies. December 15th, 1966, from complications relating to lung cancer. He died of lung cancer. He was a longtime smoker. So Roy O. Disney, who's Walt's brother, takes over the company. Roy is the CEO, and he renames Disney World to Walt Disney World. That's the official name to honor his brother. And this is Roy with Mickey at the opening of Walt Disney World in Orlando on October 1st, 1971. Roy neither has the charisma nor the know-how of Walt. Walt is like a creative genius. Roy is like good at kind of reining him in and like handling the numbers. So eventually, Roy Disney dies. So this is October 1st, opening of Walt Disney World. December 20th, Roy Disney dies. Also, Ub Iwerks dies. He's the guy who created Mickey Mouse, but no one talks about that. So this is Roy E. Disney. Roy E. Disney kind of takes over from here. He's a chairman. He's Roy O. Disney's son, and he looks kind of like Walt. So like even until his death, even until like the late 90s when he's not doing anything anymore, they keep him around because he's kind of like the mascot. He's kind of like, oh, it's like Walt's here. He sounds like him. He kind of looks like him. Movies that happen between this time, we've got The Love Bug, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, The Aristocats. Nothing huge. It just kind of like the ship kind of continues. We've got some unremarkable CEOs that take over after that. Don Tatum, Carden Walker, Ron Miller, who I don't know. And Walt Disney Animation takes a downward spiral. It is directionless. We have movies like Robin Hood, The Rescuers, and Fox and the Hound. The Rescuers ended up getting like a sequel 20 years later for some reason. It's a good movie. Rescuers Down Under is a good movie. Fox and the Hound has some really cool elements. And Robin Hood, I think, is kind of considered a classic. The interesting thing about Robin Hood is that movie is mismanaged and they're behind on deadline. So what that means is that they end up recycling a bunch of animation. You can see they're just taking animation from Snow White. They take animation from Aristocrats. They take it from Snow White again. They just recycle all this animation, kind of paint over it, because they're just like up against the wall. So the movie comes out, it's a success, but like artistically, it's pretty weak. So at this point, let me start back here. At this point, there's an animator named Don Bluth. Don Bluth has been with the company for a long time. He joined kind of early on. He worked on Sleeping Beauty, Sword in the Stone, The Robin Hood, The Rescuers. He's like one of their head animators. He's awesome. But he's like, this is crap. We can do better than this. So he leaves Disney. He takes a bunch of folks with him, and he starts his own company. And he makes a movie called Secret of Nim. Secret of Nim isn't a giant hit, but it like, I think it like costs like 5 million to make, and it brought in like 10 or 15. Like, it does okay, and it starts the company off. And this is the first time anyone has really competed with Disney on the animation front. Like, the animation is beautiful, the story is really interesting. It's a direct competitor. So while Disney animation is kind of in the shitter, a new century is about to begin on October 1st, 1982, with the launch of Epcot Center. Epcot Center is the second park in the Walt Disney World complex, and it's also the first expansion. We've had Disneyland, we've had Disney World, but this is the first extra add-on park. Epcot Center, along with eventually Hollywood Studios / MGM Studios and the Animal Kingdom, are responsible for turning Walt Disney World into a go-to destination for tourists from all over. It also is one of the only things that's profitable at Disney at this time, which is weird to think about, Disney almost going under. But Disney almost went under a lot of times, especially kind of in this area. So Epcot Center launched in 1982, and in 1983, Tokyo Disney launches. This is obviously later, but this is a shot of Tokyo Disneyland. At this point, the parks are responsible for 80% of the revenue that Disney's bringing in. They've got the movies, they've got animation, but really they've just got the parks. So in 1984, we begin the Eisner era. And this is where I think things get really interesting. So this guy is Michael Eisner, closest to me, and Frank Wells to the left of him. Frank Wells and Michael Eisner kind of have that Roy O. Disney, Walt Disney relationship. Michael Eisner wants to do crazy, crazy stuff, and Frank Wells is like, nah, let me rein you back in. So they're CEO and president, and they're like this crazy good team. Eisner also brings in this dude, Jeffrey Katzenberg, to head animation. Katzenberg has never done animation before. He's like a movie guy. He was like an executive assistant before this. He's not directed, he's not produced, he's just had his hands in things. So it's really interesting when Katzenberg interacts with the animation team, and I'll get to some of that. So we hired these guys in 1984, but there's still some projects from the old guard happening. And one of those is The Black Cauldron, the Disney movie you may not have seen or heard of ever. It launches, it loses them a ton of money. And it's because it's just terrifying. Imagine showing this to an 8-year-old. This movie is, it's just bad from the beginning. It's based on a book. They try to do rides based off of it. They try and promote it, but no one cares. It gets horrible reviews, and it goes mainly forgotten. It's also the first PG movie Disney's ever made, which now that's kind of commonplace. Frozen is PG, Zootopia is PG. There's a couple others. One of the guys who's animating on this movie, uncredited, and also animated on Fox and the Hound and something else. Anyway, is not that guy, but that guy, Brad Bird. Brad Bird will go on to do amazing things, but right now he is underappreciated, underpaid, and completely uncredited. So in 1986, Disney Animation is not just beaten, it's destroyed. They are considering closing off the animation studio entirely. And we've got The Great Mouse Detective with 4 directors, I think 8 writers. It's ridiculous. Budget of $14 million, box office of $38. By comparison, Don Bluth's follow-up film, $9 million budget, brings in almost $90 million. So the company is cool, we're maybe going to shutter animation completely, but they have another movie in the works. They release it, and it revitalizes interest in animation. And that's Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is a combination, like it's a weird mashup because you've got Spielberg in there, you've got the Warner Brothers cartoons are in there, and you've got Mickey Mouse. This movie brought in like $350 million, and suddenly like everyone at Disney's like, oh, okay, animation can work. We can do something with this. So we begin the Renaissance. The Renaissance is like, oh yeah, I think like 40 or 50 mil. Not much compared to like what they brought in. Hold on, let me see if I have it written down. I do not, but it brought in 329. Yeah, I can't imagine it was that much. A lot of animation, a lot of technology, but like Bob Hoskins wasn't bringing in like 20 million a picture. So yeah, we come to the Disney Renaissance where like I think all of us probably grew up, or we grew up knowing this stuff. So 1989. The guys that made Great Mouse Detective, two of the directors are John Musker and Ron Clements. The team of Musker and Clements, they go on to make this, The Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid is a combination of Musker and Clements, who are two directors who like kind of botched it with The Great Mouse Detective, but they were on a team of 4 directors, and they had some vision. And Katzenberg was like, "Cool, you guys are in charge." It's also the music is done by 2 guys who Howard Ashman. What up? So it's Howard Ashman and John Mencken. They get together. They did Little Shop of Horrors before this, and then something else weird before that. They are known for like kind of weird, kitschy, off-Broadway musicals. And Disney's like, yeah, you're the guys that made the musical about plant eating everyone. You're gonna be the musicians for our Renaissance. So, boom, Little Mermaid happens. Little story about John Katzenberg real quick. He was very upset at the animators throughout this. He tried to cut this song. He tried to cut Part of Your World because he's like, it's boring. Kids don't like it. He also was like upset the whole time because he's like, guys, I can't tell they're underwater. Water's blue. This whole thing should be blue. Katzenberg. He's great. So the company is super optimistic at this point. And Eisner is like, boom, 1990 to 2000, the 90s are the Disney decade. They do this like big announcement. They're like, we're going to put billions of dollars into the parks. We're going to do all this animation. Disney decade, which pans out for 5 years. After the massive success of Little Mermaid, of course, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, absolute classics. This is our boys Musker and Clements again. This is Musker and Clements. This is also Ashman and Mencken again doing the music. This is Mencken doing the music, but Ashman dies from AIDS about halfway through production. So some of the music, so the lyrics are picked up by Tim Rice. But these movies are like giant hits. And Disney's like, okay, we've got one more big thing in the works. We've got one more movie that's just gonna like blow everyone's mind. Any guesses as to what that movie is? That's right, it's Pocahontas. This movie, this was the A movie. They were producing 2 movies at the same time. They were like, we are putting everything into Pocahontas, and I guess there's this Lion movie. But Disney, like, Little Mermaid is about people, right? Aladdin's about people. Like Beauty and the Beast. It's like there's a beast, but it's about people. They're people movies. And Disney's like, cool, we don't need animal movies, we need people movies. So Pocahontas was their big push. And then Lion King kind of came out of nowhere. It was like a low-budgeted film. They did like a bunch of work like in a trailer because they didn't get to use like the main offices. But because the team cared that much about it, it just came out amazing. Also, I want to call out this dude, Lebo M. He is, I think, West African. I don't remember what country he's from. He did anything that sounds African in The Lion King, he wrote that. Elton John didn't write that. He wrote the Swahili dialect, and hold on. That's him. Yeah. So yeah. So that's Lebo. He just still sounds like that. Dude's amazing. Yes. But he also wrote, like right after Lion King came out, he's like, cool, I've got some songs that didn't really get used for the Lion King, so I'm making a new Lion King album. And like 4 or 5 of those songs got used on the Broadway show, like including like "He Lives in You," which I think is probably the best song from the show. But he's super dope. If you get a chance, like listen to his stuff.
Who's in charge of Lion King 2 and 3?
Oh man, I don't know who's in charge of Lion King 2 and 3. But I will say Lion King 1.5 is a banger. It's so good. Like Lion King is Hamlet. Lion King 1.5 is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. It's just the story of Timon and Pumbaa. It's great. Watch it. 2 and 3 are bad. All right, moving on. So this is our team at this point. We've got Eisner in the middle, Wells on the side, and Katzenberg on the other side. Wells dies in a helicopter accident. Katzenberg is like, cool, I don't want to be in animation anymore. I want to be president. Michael Eisner says no. Katzenberg leaves. So it's just Eisner. And Katzenberg gets together with these guys, Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, SKG, and makes DreamWorks, who's responsible for all of this, some of it good. And is like, again, just like with Don Bluth leaving the company, Katzenberg leaves the company. He's like, cool, I'm going to be your biggest nightmare. I'm going to compete with you. So Eisner is now kind of like off the rails. He had some failures with like Euro Disney and Disney Hong Kong, which started out really, really bad. And he's had like some flops, but Wells was always there to like kind of keep him on track. He tries in '95 to buy NBC. NBC's like, nah. So he buys ABC. Okay. He also buys the Go portal. Does anyone remember this? So Disney and Eisner specifically was like, man, you know what people are going to do if they want to know about Beauty and the Beast? They're going to go to disney.go.com and then navigate to the movie section and then click the thing that says Beauty and the Beast instead of just searching Beauty and the Beast. So if you look at ABC or Disney, they're still at abc.go.com or disney.go.com because they thought that's how the internet would work. They didn't reckon on search engines being a thing. And then we have some flops. Atlantis, which is such a good movie, but it doesn't do well. Emperor's New Groove doesn't do well. Treasure Planet loses the money. It's so good. Yeah, Emperor's New Groove is amazing. If you haven't seen it, see it.
I watched it just
Julian, name a funnier Disney movie. So we've got these, and then we've got a movie called Home on the Range. Home on the Range is so bad that composer Howard Ashman is like, yeah, I don't talk about that. He's like, Alan Menken. He's like, I don't talk about that. I'm not involved in that. So Disney at this time is distributing movies for Pixar, but they don't like own Pixar or anything. But Pixar is like kicking their ass on the regular. And one of the guys that kicks their ass is Brad Bird, who, if you remember, left the company because he was being undervalued. he wrote and directed The Incredibles and won an Oscar for it. Home on the Range was, let me see, I have the numbers. Home on the Range lost $20 million. The Incredibles had a box office of over $600 million. Brad Bird's the bomb. He's a very good writer-director. He also wrote on The Simpsons for a while in this time. He did a bunch of stuff. Oh yeah, Brad Bird didn't like Mike. Yeah, go ahead.
Is he a writer or an animator?
He's a writer, director, animator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now
He also does a voice for
oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's money.
He also did the Iron Giant, and he directed Mission Impossible 3. He does some live action stuff now too. He's crazy. So Brad Bird and Pixar are super unhappy with Disney. They're like, cool, we're the only reason you're afloat right now. They threatened to leave. They also hate Mike Eisner. So we get rid of Mike Eisner. We begin the era of acquisition. So first off, we get rid of Mike Eisner and we bring in another old white guy that kind of looks like Frank Sinatra, Bob Iger. We trade Eisner for Iger. And then Iger's first move is like, oh, cool. Let's just buy Pixar. Why don't we think of that? So 2005, they buy Pixar. They put John Lasseter in charge of animation. We get Cars, Wall-E, Up, and more. And we get sequels. Pixar at this point had only done one sequel, and that was Toy Story 2. As soon as Iger is in charge, they start cranking them out. We also start to see Pixar presence in the parks, including a brand new Toy Story Land. That's a Slinky Dog Dash. It's pretty dope. Disney starts distributing movies for Studio Ghibli, which is the biggest animation studio, or the biggest film animation studio in Japan. They're distributing, they don't own them, so they're not making a ton of money off of it. I just thought I'd include it because it's so dope. They, as we all know, in 2009, they buy Marvel. At this point, we've got a couple of Marvel movies out. Now we've gone from 2 a year to 3 a year, and who knows what coming up. Disney's pushing Marvel, they're pushing Marvel shows, and they don't have rides in the park because Universal still owns them, but in Hong Kong, Universal does not have those rides. So we do have one Iron Man ride at Disneyland Hong Kong. As soon as Universal's rights to those expire, you can bet there's going to be Marvel at Disney parks. So again, Disney's like, yeah.
So does that mean Universal Studios, those rides will legally have to be taken down?
The rides won't be taken down, they'll just be rebranded. If you go to, I went to a Six Flags recently, and they used to have the Hanna-Barbera license, but now they don't. So there's this whole kids area with the crazy van, but it's clearly the Mystery Machine. Or Red Rock, which is Bedrock from the Flintstones. It's great. So hopefully they do that. No, this was in Chicago. I haven't been to the one in Jersey, but I'm sure it's great. So anyway, just like with Pixar, Disney's like, yo, sequels, merchandise, make this happen. Then 2012, Disney's like, oh, you know what's cool? Star Wars. We can make some money out of that. So they start cranking out sequels. We got a Star Wars movie a year at this point. There's boom, 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 boom. They're working on TV shows, obviously merchandise, video games, that awesome BB-8 toy. And Star Wars Land. It's called Galaxy's Edge, but who's going to call it Galaxy's Edge? Well, we can just call it Star Wars Land. If you all haven't seen, there's a life-size Millennium Falcon that you can go in, and it's a ride. It's going to be so cool, and I'm going to cry as soon as I walk in there. Orlando and Anaheim. Anaheim's opens first, which is going to be pretty soon. It's the same, yeah. Orlando's is a little bigger just because they have more space to work with. And eventually, but not yet, they are going to be doing a Star Wars Hotel, where instead of seeing out your windows, they will be screens, so you will be looking at space. And like what they've talked about, like their blue sky is guests will only be able to stay there for 2 days, because those 2 days you'll be part of an immersive story where, like, you know, people will like come to your door in the morning and be like, we've got to go on a mission to get breakfast. But it sounds really cool. It sounds really cool. 2016, there's a company called BAMTech. They are the streaming provider for ESPN, MLB, and the WWE. They are awesome at streaming services. I really want to work there. Disney had a stake in it. It was like a 33% stake. They eventually just bought it outright and have renamed it Disney Streaming Services. They'll be launching Disney Plus later this year, which includes Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and National Geographic. I don't know. They bought Nat Geo at some point. But so, like, all of those Netflix shows that got canceled, I wonder where they're going to end up. All the, like, Avengers movies, all the Star Wars stuff, all the new Star Wars shows, everything Disney and Pixar is going to be on Disney Plus. It's going to be crazy pants. So from 2000 to 2016, Disney is booming. Attendance grows, ticket prices go up, revenue increases. Oh, also they underpay their employees so much that they have to live in tents. This guy's a little sidebar. Yeah, even though revenues are increasing, like, dramatically, worker pay goes down. An average worker at Disneyland was making $16 an hour. That went down to $14 an hour over the span of all of these acquisitions and money making. Just worth noting. Eventually Disney caved, and they have said that by 2021, they'll raise their lowest paid employees to $15 an hour, which, wow, they're killing it. But also, the company that obviously can't afford to pay their workers spent $70 billion to buy 21st Century Fox. This is neat because we got, like, X-Men and the Fantastic Four in our Marvel movies now, potentially. Like, that universe is together again. But it's also kind of scary because Disney now just owns everything. They don't own DreamWorks and they don't own WeWork, and that's about it. Like, Disney is responsible for all of our animation, or almost all of our entertainment at this point. It's ridiculous. So we'll see what happens. Also, they're laying off like 4,000 people, so that'll be great. So what's next? I don't know. But if history tells us anything, it's that Disney will screw someone over or fire them or, like, just treat them really shitty. They will leave, make a competitor, and almost topple the giant again. So, there we go. We've got 2 minutes. Any questions? Evans. I don't know. That might be a branding question. Do you know how long Sony has Spider-Man?
I think they try to buy it and rid of Marvel to share Spider-Man, like, for the anime stuff, but for live action stuff, they can only use Spider-Man as canon. Sony's that. That's why you're getting, like, more DS and Venom and stuff. They technically have rights to Tom Holland Spider-Man, but they haven't used it.
So Spider-Man's weird. Sebastian.
So they bought 2 licenses for all their artists, which is like a 2D art animation engine. But it doesn't seem like they have any 2D plays at all anymore. Are there some you're aware of?
I think the only 2D plays for Disney in the future are going to be television. They're doing, like, even like animated version, even television versions of their feature films, like Tangled, are 3D. So I'm not totally sure, but I know they do still have some 2D animation. I think the Lion King show is still going. There's a couple of other things, but I would be shocked and pleasantly surprised if they did another 2D movie. Cool. All right.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, thank you all.
Sorry, we're running.